Every American male along the way, at some point in his life, has probably heard of Kit Carson. Kit Carson was an American frontiersman back in the 1800s. He was a mountain man, an army officer with exaggerated exploits, but he was a legend in his own time. And if you haven't ever read much about him, you should pick up a history book and find out some of the things that he's done. Pretty amazing character. And but one of the most popular things he ever said was, "The cowards never start, and the weak die along the way." The cowards never start, and the weak die along the way. Now, I want to ask you to let this phrase challenge you. I don't want to suggest that you're a coward or that you're weak, but do you feel like at some point, do you feel like sometimes that you maybe took the easy way out? You gave up on what you wanted to do. You started something, but you didn't finish it. Perhaps you didn't start anything at all. The reason why I don't want to suggest that you're a coward or that you're weak is because I assume that you probably did start something, but perhaps you didn't finish it. That's not the definition of a coward by Kit Carson standards. But, you get to a certain point in life as you get to be older. When you're young, you have these aspirations. You want to be this, you want to be that. I can testify that growing up, I wanted to be so many things, as most boys do. I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be a boxer. Man, more than anything else, for most of my life growing up, what I wanted to be was a Hollywood stuntman. Now, this is back, I was born in 1970. Back then, it was not easy to find a Hollywood stuntman school. Still isn't for the most part. But it was a whole lot harder to try to even pin anything down because you didn't have the internet. But I tried. I wanted to be a ninja. A lot of you guys my age listening to this know exactly what I'm talking about and why I say that. Because, man, back then, those movies, those ninja movies, they were the rage. Remember those guys? Remember the teenage boys when you were a teenage boy? Remember those guys that would wear the eyeliner because the ninjas would in those movies? I don't know. I thought that was weird then, too. Not weird for the ninja, but weird for these kids. But nevertheless, I wanted to be a lot of things. I started a lot of things, but I didn't finish too much of anything. But that's what you do when you're young. You play around with different things, and you find out what you want to do, what you don't want to do. You get a job, and then perhaps some people go to college, some people don't. I didn't. But you start to develop a path, and you move in a direction, and before you know it, you look back and you realize that a lot of stuff that you started, a lot of stuff that you wanted to do, kind of fell off. And then you get to be like me in your late 40s, you start thinking, what could I have done if I had stuck to something? I started something, but what could I have done if I had just stuck to it, if I had done it long enough? And then you start to feel like, I think that's where a lot of men start to feel weak. I honestly do. Unachieved dreams. You feel like you could have done more, but you didn't. Now, you don't think about this necessarily rationally. Your memory is not always going to serve you correctly because, we tend to be hard on ourselves, and perhaps some of the people in our lives are kind of hard on us too. And hopefully not, but we tend to be hard on ourselves, and we don't remember things right, and sometimes we think we just gave up. Sometimes we remember correctly and say, well, it was because I got busy. And I don't know, it might be a little bit of both. But if you feel weak, if you feel like a coward at all, and I'm not saying I do or you are or anything else like that, because some of those thoughts and those feelings are just fleeting. But I'm hoping something will help. Whatever it is you do or you want to do, whatever it is you thought about doing but didn't finish, think about picking it back up. You might say, well, I'm a lot older now. It's just not the same. I don't have the same kind of time. I don't have the same kind of ability. I'm sure there's a lot of things you wanted to do. It wasn't just one thing, was it? Wasn't there a lot of things? Think about that. Pick something back up. It'll renew your vitality. It'll make you feel younger. You know, when I was about 15, 16 years old, my parents got separated. They separated and got divorced. And that was probably the darkest period in my life. And it just, my parents were very conservative. A lot of things happened that were so contrary to how we were raised and contrary to what we believed. And it was just, I really had lots of thoughts of suicide back then. And, you know, perhaps you've gone through something that's really taking you to a dark place and you've had the same kind of feelings. But I really contemplated suicide quite a bit during that time. It was just extremely hard. But something happened. I watched the movie The Sting with Robert Redford, Paul Newman. It was made back in 1973, 74. And this movie had an amazing soundtrack. In my opinion, it's probably one of the best movies ever made. You ought to check it out if you haven't seen it. But the soundtrack was just the best. It featured the music of Scott Joplin, played by Marvin Hamlish. And it when I heard the music on that movie, it made me feel so good. It made me feel so happy. It's the only thing that lifted my spirits. Now, I wasn't necessarily musical. I had been taking piano lessons since I was 5, but I wasn't good. I was terrible. I hated playing the piano. And ragtime is the music that was in that movie. Scott Joplin music is ragtime. He's the king of ragtime. And so I questioned my oldest brother about it to find out what kind of music it was, and that's what he told me. And so I started buying music at that time. You didn't have the internet. You had to go out and buy it, find it, you know. And I'd buy ragtime, listen to it, and it always lifted my spirits. It's the only thing that ever lifted my spirits with all the chaos around me. And so at that time, even though I played the piano, I still didn't think about playing ragtime. Like I said, you know, ragtime is primarily piano music. It's played by orchestras, but it's written for the piano. And I still didn't think about playing it because I really hated playing the piano until I bought a videotape of Johnny Maddox playing ragtime piano in a restaurant somewhere, and that's what he did. That's all he did, and he was really good at it. And I saw the people in the crowd. They were so happy. They felt like what I did. And I said to myself, maybe I could do that. If I could play like that, if I could play that music in that way, then I could see myself doing it. So I started playing ragtime. I was terrible at it. It's very hard to play. And I couldn't find anybody to teach me how to do it, so I taught myself. And I meticulously went over the music note by note, chord by chord, line by line. And I became pretty good at it. Eventually, I was practicing hours and hours a day. Even into my teens and early 20s, I was practicing 3 to 6 hours a day. But I burn out. I burn out because I did it too much. And then I stopped playing. And then I had a family. And then I gave that up. Not my family, but I gave up piano. I also did kung fu for 10 years, which I absolutely loved. Those are two things that I really did a lot of. But I ended up giving them up because I got busy. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right now, there's probably things going through your head as you're listening to this going, I can relate to that. But you know what? I didn't play piano for 17 years. Someone encouraged me to pick it back up. I kind of hesitated, and then I thought, maybe I could do it. Now, in my early 20s, when I was playing piano, I would if a 47-year-old man would have said to me, hey, I haven't played the piano for 17 years. I'm thinking about picking it back up and actually doing it professionally and see if I can just make people happy with it, which is what I want to do. If I would have had a 40-something-year-old man telling me that in my 20s, I would have said to him, look, man, you know, you're kind of old. You might want to find something else to do. But that's not how I feel now. I might have just lived half of my life only. I might have another 47 years or more. Who knows? So I picked it back up, and I'm doing pretty good. I'm not great, but I'm doing better than I expected. What I want to encourage you to do today is think about the things that you wanted to do, the things that you gave up. Perhaps it because you gave up on things that you didn't finish things that you started. You might feel a little weak. You might feel like you might feel like a coward. I doubt it, but I mean you know what I'm saying here. I'm trying to stay in the spirit of the phrase that I gave you at the beginning that Kit Carson said. But I encourage you. I hope it's an encouragement to you. Pick something back up. Pursue it. Develop a plan. Develop a routine. I probably play 3 hours a day now in order to get to where I want to go. It's going to take me a while. If it takes me 5 years to get to where I want to go, I'm still only going to be 50, 51. In my mind now, that's still young. Years ago, I would have said that was old. But it's never too late. It's never too late to pursue what you want to do. John Quincy Adams, at 70-something years old, started teaching himself Hebrew. At 70, I think he was 70 years old, started teaching himself Hebrew. There's a man who never thought he was too old to start something new. So go out there, think about it, guys. I hope it's an encouragement to you, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.